Good morning. Today is December 17th, 2024. It's very early in the morning, and I have this Hauser guitar here from 1969. It's a Hauser 2 Miguel Yobe, or a Lobet model, however you pronounce it. And it's a beautiful sounding instrument. It's a little beat up, but it's incredible guitar. And I've compared it against all of my Desmonds, of which I have 12 in stock currently. And this guitar really holds its own. I won't go into details about how I feel between this and the different Desmonds that I compared to it. Only to say they're different, and in some ways the Desmonds are better, and in some ways this is better. It sort of varies. In any event, the guitar is leaving this morning. I've had it for about 5 days. I made a new bridge saddle for it right here. The former saddle was concave and a little bit high, so I adjusted it down lower to help the owner play easier. It's an odd scale length. It's supposed to be like a 640 scale length. In actuality, it's a little bit longer, as if when Hauser, he glues the head on after he makes the guitar. And it's as if this, from the nut to the 12th fret, I can't exactly remember the measurement, but it was sort of like 321 and a half, something like that. So he had to put that on the other side and add a couple of millimeters for compensation. It ended up being kind of an oddball length, like 643 instead of 642. But anyway, and it's 51 here, 61 here width. The depth is 21, and at the 9th is 25, typical Hauser taper. Tuning machines are Lansdorfer's silver, and they work great. They are installed perfectly, and they're very smooth, actually. Smoothest I've ever seen for Lansdorfer's. It's a smaller guitar. It's about 7/16 of an inch smaller all the way around than a typical concert model. The depth of the sound box is, I have to remember, I think it's 3.5 here, and I think it goes all the way up to 3 7/8 at the other end. So it's unusual in the fact that usually it's 1/4 of an inch deeper at the bottom end than the top end in most guitars. This one's a little bit more. Anyway, the interesting thing about this guitar, and I have it all covered up here to protect it from my camera. The interesting thing about this guitar is these 3 pins underneath, one underneath the first string in the saddle slot, one underneath the first string, one underneath the 6th string, and one in the middle, although it's a little more to the treble side, a little closer to the G string than the D string. And I've contacted Marshall Bernay at Bernay Guitars. He hasn't gotten back to me yet. Hopefully he will, but I thought maybe they would know what these pins are for. Interestingly, my personal 1971 Hermann Hauser 2 that I owned for about 5 years, it also had these 3 pins. This is a 1969 Hauser 2 low bay model. Mine was a 1971 Hauser 2 low bay model. They both have these pins. And the only thing I can think of is, in Hauser's mind, these little pins transmit sound to the soundboard from the bottom of the bridge saddle. They are not indexing pins to hold the bridge in place, because those pins are in the valley, right here behind the sixth string, and well, actually in between the one and the two, there's a pin here. You can barely see it, that lighter color there on the valley, on the slanted valley. And on this one, let me just take a look. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's in between 5 and 6. There's another wooden rosewood pin. So those are the indexing pins. These steel pins, those are rosewood. These steel pins, I should call those rosewood pegs, not pins. But these things are pins, and I just have a small magnet here. The guitar is leaving this morning, so I wanted to check this. I have a little small magnet here, and when I attached it to the pin, it does not have any attraction. So this tells me that these pins are not steel. They're most likely aluminum pins, or they could even be lead, like a lead solder. I have no idea what they are. I also thought that there might be some kind of a metal strip inlaid into the bottom of the bridge underneath the saddle slot. And these pins would transmit sound from the bridge saddle down to that metal strip or bar. It's just a thought. I don't really know. Or it could just be these three little pins, these aluminum or lead, something that's non-magnetic. They are silver, so they've got to be some kind of metal. And this is the odd thing about this guitar. So I've not seen anything about this online. Back when I owned my Hauser from 2016 till about 2021, I could not find anything online about this. And, you know, in the mind of a guitar maker, we do weird things that are unique to our way of thinking, our mentality, maybe our intellectual thoughts. I know Daniel Friedrich had all sorts of crazy ideas inside of his guitars. I owned one of those as well from 1978. And I owned that for about the same amount of time as the Hauser, during the same time. And I studied that guitar in depth, and it's very quirky inside. So, you know, who knows? This is a beautiful instrument. Just going to pull back a little bit of this to show you the rosette. It's a gorgeous rosette. The Brazilian rosewood is beautiful on the back especially, but you've got your typical beautiful Brazilian. There's a little side dot here that I made out of some white electrical tape. He had on a little piece of blue masking tape, and it really looked tacky, so I got rid of it. And I had to file the fret ends anyway, and sand and buff, and then repolish on the edge of the fretboard. So his piece of tape had to come off. I did save it in case he wants it. But anyway, it's a beautiful thing. I wouldn't say it's a powerhouse, but it's certainly very loud for such a small guitar and such a short scale length. And it has a incredibly clear musical sound. The only problem with it, and in my way of thinking, this might be the reason that it's had probably several owners, because these expensive guitars do. One of the issues is the first string, 12th fret. The strings are loose right now. This note is dead. And it had on knob block Erithicus strings. Those strings are very thin. And I thought, well, let me try and put a Diodario EJ45 string on the first, and that's what's on here right now. And interestingly, you can see that the first string is fatter than the Erithicus second string. And this is just a temporary string that I put on to see if it would help the first string, the sound of this first string. And I have to say that not only did it help the sound of the first string, it especially helped it up here from, from this E all the way up to B. It helped it a lot. All these notes really ring now. And with the Eurythmicus first string, they didn't ring at all. They were kind of dead. But especially the E note here on the first string. This E was dead as a doornail. So the owner's coming by at 9 o'clock this morning, and I'll share all this information with him. This guitar is a great guitar. It's a little beat up. This is an interesting thing right here, and we don't thoroughly know why this is so gouged out here. Same is true on the other side. It's kind of beat up, as you can see, in the reflection of the light. But beyond that, it just has your normal fingernail marks, and it's nothing. The soundboard is fairly thick. It's not as thick as my 1971. My 1971 was 3.5 millimeters thick soundboard, and it thinned out around the edges, but not that much. It didn't get below 3.1. And 3 millimeters for a soundboard. This is Bavarian spruce, very beautiful, aged very nicely. Yeah, the Hauser's tops are thicker. This one is a little bit thinner than mine. This averages about 3.2 millimeters in the bridge area, and it feathers out around the periphery, especially the lower bout. It feathers out to about 2.9, somewhere in there, 2.8, 2.9. So there's a slight graduation around the periphery. But the overall soundboard is in the 3.1 to 3.2 range in this area, FYI. The braces are parabolic. They're shaped like the profile of an airplane wing. And there is a thin bridge pad underneath the bridge. It's spruce. And each brace is cut out around it, so the brace does not touch the bridge pad. It's cut out in a convex cutout. It's not a parallel cutout. It's sort of like semicircular cutout of the bottom of the bottom of each brace where it goes over the bridge pad inside. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Incredible guitar. I think it might sound a little bit better than mine. Mine was in better cosmetic condition. I love the aged nut, and the saddle was the same. It was this orangey, yellowish, brownish color. I was going to try to match the color of this new bone saddle. I was going to match it with the tie block, but the problem is I don't really have the right colored dyes here. And for me to go out and buy the right colored dyes, it cost me like $50, and I would only be using it for this one saddle. Plus the guy is, he's in London. He's not in London now, but he was in London yesterday. He flew into Orlando, and he's taking an Uber from the hotel this morning to come and pick up his guitar, and then he's hopping on the high-speed rail and taking that from the airport to where he lives in South Florida. So anyway, you can see under here I've marked the treble and bass side. It's a very, very small saddle. The saddle slot is not deep. But just take note of these 3 pins because I want to share this with other guitar makers and owners. Love to know. You can contact me at rdesmond.com. rdesmond@aol.com. If you know the answer to this, because I don't. But I'm sure in Hauser's mind it had something to do with sound transmission. It is not for indexing. I'm almost certain of that. And the fact that these pins are right under the strings. The two E's, these pins are pretty much directly under those two strings. If I go this way, you can see that. And the third one is in the middle, but it's sort of favoring toward the G. Anyway, Bob, wrapping it up here, just some quick thoughts about this beautiful instrument. And sorry about the shaky camera work, but it's a beauty. It sounds incredible. These things don't come cheap. I think this one was about $50,000, and that was a couple of years ago, probably because of the condition. It might otherwise be a more expensive guitar. I did compare it to 9 of my Desmonds, and the other 3 as well. I have 12 right now. Mine are all very good guitars and hold their own against this thing. However, you know, they're a little different, and I do have a few Hauser models, one of which comes, I think is superior to this guitar, actually. But it was a great chance for me to help this man out and also measure the thickness of the soundboard. The sides, I did not measure them, but on my Hauser, the sides were at 2.3. They range from 2.0 to 2.3, and the back was 2.5 millimeters. So I'm guessing this is about the same. It's a very light guitar. The angle of the neck is too steep. He missed the target by maybe a millimeter. So therefore, it's difficult to lower the action. The final action on this after I did my work, I have my paper here. I got the action down to 3.5 and about 2.8. About 2.8 on the treble side, and on the bass 3.5, and that's really a good place to be. But there's really not much room to go down further, just because of the angle of the neck. There's just a little bit too much. It's not gross like some guitars, but it's just a little bit off. Mine was better, but still, mine had the same thing. There wasn't much adjustment that could ever been made. So we saved the original saddle, and I made a new one. If he wants me to color this, I did do some experiments with some offcuts of bone. Let's see if I can get this in focus here. Come back. It's out of focus. Come on now. Let's see if we can help this thing. There it goes. Okay. Yeah, I did some little tests with some colored, if you can believe it, some colored Sharpies, just to see if I could sort of match the color. And I got it kind of close. I did it and I smudged it. Let me see if I can get a little closer. Yeah, it looks pretty awful, really. But I got the color kind of close. But it's just not, you know, professional enough for my taste. I also tried some stain. It didn't do much. So I've decided just to leave the saddle white for now and leave it alone. So I'm going to put it back in and tune it up. I've got a couple of hours before the guy arrives, and that's it. Just posting about this beautiful instrument, and the main thing is these 3 pins. I really wanted to get this on YouTube so other guitar makers could be intrigued by it, and I'm sure everybody's going to have an opinion, and they're all welcome. And if you know exactly why it's like this, I'd love to know. My guess is sound transmission. Okay, Bob Desmond signing out. Thank you for watching.